Yeah, it is.
So we just see who's ever on. Do we just see, where do we see the number of participants?
Off to the left side of our screen,
Oh,
everybody else's screen is going to be different, but this is everybody online.
okay, great,
And
thank
then
you.
we just have active speaker view in the
Okay.
right corner. And just for purposes of, I know our video feed is really small with the fisheye lens, but I'll just read in. Members present: Bob Lyons, Don Knorr, Dan Ramsey, Carrie Scheffner, Carl Stumpf, and Kendra Wokus. So we have a quorum and conduct business.
All right, and I will call this meeting to order. Our first order of business are minutes from April 10th or March 27th. I'm sorry, that is it. Minutes from March 27th.
Don, I'll move approve. That's public.
We have a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second to Don's motion?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion with respect to the minutes? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the March 27th minutes are approved.
Bob, I'm gonna abstain from voting because I wasn't present. For the last
Okay. I think that's fine.
Thanks for catching me, Carrie.
All right, so we have minutes approved with one abstention. Next item of business is Elmwood traffic calming measures.
Right. And Sean Allsrud's on the line. In fact, Sean, you're on our screen, so that's some good news. Something's working tonight. Sean prepared a memo for kind of where we're at right now. We still have some data to collect to work through the rest of the neighborhood traffic management program. But our overall goal is if we can identify something that we could get out for a neighborhood vote yet this year, we might be able to construct it yet this year, probably not with the project, but maybe on the tail end. Otherwise, there's an opportunity to carry money forward into next year, potentially. So step one is we're trying to follow the process and put together our case for points.
Too bad it didn't happen a little earlier. It would have been, if something is ending up going to be constructed, it would have been easier to do it as part of the overall project than to go back in next year and maybe have to rip up some pavement and do some other things.
I agree. That would have been smoother
Yeah.
for all concerned. Yeah.
So there really isn't any action that we have to take on this evening, is there?
Well, we don't have to, but I know there was interest in just talking about the program in general to some degree, and maybe this project in specific, but it wasn't on the agenda last time, so it's
Okay.
on the agenda for committee discussion or consideration or any input you want to offer.
Can we put up the score sheet?
The
I mean, I'm trying to understand.
sure, the draft score sheet all.
Because what that says to me is that there is no justification for traffic calming.
No, I want to temper that by saying maybe yet, right? So there are some blanks that are just question marks right now. Now, we go through first the eligibility criteria.
Right.
Is the road even eligible per our policy? And in only one case, we ran across that it doesn't have 800 vehicles per day the way we counted it. That can still be overridden as a policy question. So we don't, as staff, just kick it out. We only flag that for future discussion. We would then need to go revisit some of this data with the neighbors to maybe refine the application and see, are we even talking about the right thing? And until we have those points together, it's difficult really to have that conversation. Like, are we missing something? Are we measuring this at the wrong time of day? Are we counting the wrong number of people for some odd reason? So some of that is baked into it too. So what we've got right now is, in particular, at the mid-block crosswalk, for instance, or even at Middleton Street or Bristol Street, we haven't really had the opportunity to count pedestrian crossings, probably associated with school. So So this is put in here really as an overview of what sort of data we're looking at and how the points system in the program works, but this isn't complete yet.
So would you collect more data and finish this form and then meet with the advocate?
And then, right, meet with the applicant or applicants. In this case, it's really kind of two separate areas.
Okay,
And then go over that again and say, you know, this is what we're seeing. Here's going to be our recommendation or our initial thoughts. And let's begin this conversation with the goal that if it meets the points requirement and is eligible, that then the neighborhood forms an advocacy group to really drive the vote and lead the program. And we as staff then are more of a support role for that.
And then does the neighborhood group get to decide what the features are, or?
They work with us to propose features for a vote, and those households in the affected area actually vote on it.
Okay, because I think, okay, that's good, because I know there was some concern about if it is speed bumps or anything like that, where they would fall. And if you have the neighbors that have the ability to sound in and say, I'm okay with a speed bump close to my driveway. Is that something is that how the process would work?
We want to hear that input, right? But
Yeah.
the neighborhood group might say, well, it's got to go somewhere, right?
Right.
And your driveway is as good as anybody's driveway. That particular person may vote against it,
Mhm.
but a majority of other people might vote in favor of it. And that gives us some direction then. You know, and so we've done this a couple different ways. Prior to there being this program, the city just installed some features, and that was wildly unpopular. That the government was just deciding these things and mandating them and just plunking them down, and nobody seemed to like that process. So we came up with this one instead, where they have a lot of input on it. And that doesn't mean everybody's happy, because we've built some of those with neighborhood input. And the folks who really oppose it still oppose it.
There seems to be a lot of speculation from the folks that are pushing this, that what's happening is that Elmwood is being used as an alternative to University Avenue. We have any data that shows that?
I would say, you know, traffic counts of 500-600 cars a day. I'm not seeing that. That should be a higher number then.
And my concern would be, I mean, if we do this on the basis of there's some amount of traffic that's diverted off University Avenue and racing up and down Elmwood, if you make that less possible by traffic calming measures, what prohibits it just from moving up to Hubbard Avenue and doing the same thing on Hubbard Avenue?
No, I would expect if we do something on Elmwood Avenue, there's going to be some certain, maybe small percentage of drivers that pick some alternate route.
Yeah, well,
Up to and including
but,
Hubbard
you
Avenue.
know, that's a whole bunch of conjecture and the data doesn't show that.
and the
The
data,
data doesn't show that they're speeding.
and it doesn't show that there are any significant accident problems either.
That would be able to be rectified by traffic.
Yeah.
calming. So the crash reports tended to be someone backing out of their driveway into a parked car, or missing a curve and driving into a tree, or pulling too far over the center line while waiting to turn into their driveway and getting clipped by someone coming the opposite
Not to
direction.
fix that with traffic calming.
Exactly. So we don't count those as traffic calming kinds of
Yeah.
things.
I have a question regarding the parking, because I think, like you were saying with the crash, some of the visibility stuff, and parking isn't part of this study at all.
It isn't.
It's
no.
just traffic numbers and speeds. Because I think visibility on Elmwood is a problem at intersections
Yeah.
because of parking. And I don't think that people would go off Elmwood to Hubbard. I think people use Elmwood because it connects to Old Middleton. And it becomes a straight shot down to Whitney Way to get on to it so I think that's the conduit that people would choose. I don't think that they would go to Franklin or Hubbard just to get off of University for that. I think they would be on Elmwood because of its connectivity. And there's speed bumps on Elmwood or on Old Middleton in Madison.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, they've obviously had a problem with it. And as soon as you hit Stonefield and you get into Middleton, it becomes a straightaway until that slight bend. And people they come off those speed bumps and they pick up speed. So I I think, and that would be my other concern, is that there are parts of Elmwood that aren't maybe further down that might be good spots to start addressing some of this issue with the speeding, that aren't part of the study.
Oh, yeah, so that's always the other part, right?
Yeah.
Are we measuring the thing at the right spot?
Yeah,
Because we're measuring where we've heard the problem.
right. And where the people got behind, where there was enough organization, the neighbors came forward. But I would say that I mean, we heard from a couple people down that way a couple months ago about problems down, and I would agree that there's problems down on that part of Elmwood too. So I don't know if that's, as we go forward with all of this, how that gets lumped in, or if it can be lumped in.
Well, yeah, unless we hear about it, we won't study it. And
Yeah.
If we don't study it, it wouldn't be included, other than maybe as a
Well,
future separate.
I mean, Gateway is pretty far down, so
Yeah, it is, and.
And
part
that's
of-
the, you know, the highest speed area,
yeah,
but it's still only 1%.
yeah. Well, I think there was a 2.5 at one. One of them was like a 2.7% over 35 miles per hour.
Yeah,
at
so we're looking
Gateway
at
and-
two things is just what's the 85th percentile speed? What are most people
Yeah,
choosing or self-selecting in terms of their speed? And then there's an excessive speed that's 10 over. What percentage of traffic is going 10 over? So there we're looking at like 1% is going at least 35 miles an hour instead of 25.
I mean, that's still pretty fast for a residential neighborhood.
It is.
Yeah. Especially with parking on both sides of the street.
Yeah,
It's not a startling number. I mean, it's unfortunately sort of common on especially our wider straight-ish roads. That's sort of a normal thing. We heard also already from EMS that they are frequent users of this route ambulance service. So they were really discouraging of speed humps
Speed
as a
humps.
consideration. So Sean was looking at just ballpark layouts of what would a traffic circle at Gateway, the intersection look like, or could it look like? And I mean, granted, that's all sort of thinking ahead just a little bit,
Right.
but to
What
some
about,
degree, we're-
what do speed bumps do in terms of snowplows?
they're okay
Do
with
they slow it
plows.
down, or what do they?
They're going pretty slow already. They don't
Oh.
go too fast with snow plows. It does have to ride up and over, and when your plow's at
Yeah.
a skew angle, you know, the
Yeah.
leading edge is kind of rocking.
I mean, you don't have any maintenance, higher maintenance issues.
They don't seem to be causing equipment damage or undue stress on the driver. None of this is sort of their favorite, but gee, you got to look at the big picture too, and they get that. The biggest problem we've had with speed humps operationally actually was our street sweeper. If they're built a little bit too tall, it grabs the debris pan and dumps the whole thing. So. That's gonna happen.
Counterproductive.
Yeah, it turns into a longer day.
So this process then is still in, there's still, what, a couple more months worth of work to do before it gets back to the neighbors, or?
Do you have a sense, Sean, for when we might be able to complete this grid, at least first blush?
I think in the next few weeks, we could probably get this, the NTMP completed.
The points
At least-
criteria?
Yeah, at least have that data collected. One thing I did want to point out is that this process is started through an application. And in that application, the applicant will describe the situations at the different areas. So the first thing we're looking at is that application. And on this application, one of the challenges we run into is it wasn't described. I think it's up top, Sean, I'm sorry.
Well, I was gonna go to the process entirely. And just
Oh, okay.
zoom
okay.
in on that a little bit.
so an applicant will come in and talk with us and we can explain that process to them. And then they have a form that they'll fill out with their concerns. That's the first thing we look at. We can identify the area and we try to make it a block by block area to determine, is it 1 block or is it 5 blocks? But also what is occurring there. And so the description of what they give us is a big basis of what we start from. And the application that we received for this, it did describe that there is occasional speeding, but that the overall problem has been inattentive driving. And a speed bump or traffic calming isn't necessarily a process that would correct that. So I think it's important that we look at the application and what the applicant is trying to achieve.
Some speed bumps can get your attention.
And traffic.
If you're unattentive, it will. That's for sure. So I just wanted to point out that is part of the process that we want to look and see what the applicant would like us to address.
Yeah, and that's where this can get a little bit iterative. So we collect some data, we run our points, we share that information. It either meets the points or maybe we're looking at the wrong thing and need to remeasure something. That can go around. So.
So in a few weeks, then it will be ready to take the scoring to the applicant or the group of the neighborhood group, and you start those conversations then?
I think Sean's, saying that he thinks in the next couple of weeks, he can complete that first cut at the grid.
And then after that, after the discussions with the neighborhood group, is that when you bring it back to this committee to look at what the issues were or what the plan is moving forward?
So sort of after we get out of that loop that we're looking at the right thing and it finally meets points, then we can start working with them a little bit to say, what's your idea of layout? What do we want? Where do we want it? Right? It's at that point that we come back to usually to Public Works and say, hey, is there support for this kind of thing?
I'm just trying to figure out
Before we get it to a vote.
Okay,
Because I don't want people voting yes on something that the committee won't support.
right. So you're actually a ways away from that process.
I think probably that might be more the couple months.
Sure. Okay.
If it doesn't meet the points criteria, does that end the process?
The way this is written, yes, if it's out, if we can't verify that there's a problem and the way the process is set up, 20 points constitutes a problem. And we can't sort of redefine it until there is a problem, then it's just, we're done.
Okay.
That doesn't mean it's not a concern, but it's
Right.
not a neighborhood traffic management program thing.
And that's not, there's no variance to that. There's no overruling that. It's black and white. You meet the number or you don't.
This process also has, oh, by the way, the government can just decide to do something. I'm telling you, we did that.
Right.
We were not appreciated for that effort. Nobody wants the government to tell them how to live, I think.
But could you still go through this process if the criteria doesn't meet that number?
We can, but
Well, what happens is it comes to the Public Works Committee. If the Public Works Committee won't support it because it doesn't meet the points,
Okay. so
then for
we-
it to continue forward, it really becomes a political issue.
exactly.
Okay.
And
To the council.
And if the city at some point says, oh, 16 points is fine there, well, based on what?
Okay.
Because the next one that meets 16 points has a valid argument to make to say that seems to be good enough now.
And Carl, you brought that up at the last meeting. Yeah, once we start down this road,
Yeah.
everybody's gonna want it.
Well, I'd like to, I'm happy to see that there is some sort of a actual data way of getting to an answer. I mean, rather than just saying the neighborhood wants. I think that's important.
Yeah.
Because I still am concerned that, too much of a precedent here, we end up with speed bumps on every street in town. I mean, I can justify Woodgate Road. You know? I bet you we do a study and it's gonna be a lot worse than this.
Yeah.
Sean, do we, I don't recall if, when we do the neighborhood vote, say for Elmwood Avenue, would the residents of Hubbard Avenue, would they be part of that process? I know earlier we were talking about traffic then being pushed to the adjacent street or something.
Yeah, we consider that the affected area, so that's also part of what we have to talk over with the neighborhood group, is what's the affected area, because normally a collector street isn't considered just unto itself, right? That usually at least half of the neighboring street also counts then, so maybe the north side of Hubbard Avenue gets to vote, that kind of thing.
Any,
And sort of the push-pull with that all is, right, the bigger your voting block, the less likely of success. But if it's too small a voting block, then it's not representative of the interests either.
any further discussion warranted on this for now, or we just let the process run its course here and collect more data and see where it takes us?
Good question, Bob.
Good question. Anybody want to
Did
weigh
you have
in?
anything else, Sean, that you need in terms of guidance to continue with the process?
I think for Elmwood Avenue, I would just need, if they'd like me to collect some more data, we can do that and bring that back again, hopefully in the next month.
Yeah, I think we'll have to collect data, finish the grid, talk to the applicant, see where it lays, right? Or lies. I got that wrong either way at this point. And once we can determine we've effectively addressed what the applicant thinks the issue is, it either does or does not have enough points.
And I think you have to finish that process before this committee can do anything, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so we don't need any particular committee action here unless you've got some advice or policy issues or find fault with the report that was laid out years ago.
How many times has that been followed through to a conclusion?
To conclusion, I can only think of one. And it does not have universal buy-in to this day.
Which one was that? If I
That
might
was
ask?
on Westfield.
Westfield.
So it was approved, the process was approved by the city council in what, 2005, and then it
Yeah,
was revised in 15?
I think,
Did
yeah,
that
we
go
made a
through
revision. It did, yeah.
Okay.
And the revision there was, well, what does it take to get something back out? That also takes a neighborhood vote now. So it can't be just 5 angry neighbors saying, well, we hated that thing from the beginning, now get it out. Has to be voted on.
All right, are we ready to move on to the next item then? Anybody else have anything they wish to say on this topic? All right, we will revisit it sometime soon, I am sure.
Right.
Wow.
So next up is our resolution for streetlight conversions. And Kelly Hilliard, who authored this memo for us and also drafted the resolution that's on the agenda, is present with us. Hey, yeah. So in a nutshell, the city has an interest in replacing streetlights with LED fixtures and or retrofit kits as we can. There was recently a notification that Kelly, you might want to remind me who was sponsoring that funding, but an application for funding anyway to help us make energy upgrades like this. And so she's been working with Tom Weber, one of our engineering techs, on that. I think Kelly has the application done or nearly done. And also is looking at focus on energy for rebates. So if we get the right model of streetlight, apparently we can get a rebate besides for our share. But it kind of starts with the resolution, you know, is there council support for this? And so skipping ahead, I put some red line edits on what the sustainability already put together, just for consideration and discussion. And the request is that the committee provide input back to the sustainability committee so that they can take another look at it prior to getting it to the council.
Okay, I noticed that, was it at the second page of this, that it basically says they'll be replaced as the existing fixtures need to be replaced based on
Yeah.
maintenance.
The way it says is, you
That
know,
burnout doesn't make any sense.
we're going to replace them when they burn out. And I don't know if that means the fixture is wrecked or the bulb is unlit. You know, if the lamp goes dark. But they both have pretty different budget impacts and time impacts.
Yeah.
So we'll need to plan appropriately if whatever the council means by that.
I think, so I have some comments about this. As Kendra is aware, I've been going through it with the Parks Department. Parks Department, at Stonefield Park, replaced the lighting on the north side of their building on the park. And it ended up, and I'm on the other side of the school grounds, and it ended up lighting my rooms on the south end of the house. We have a ordinance called Chapter 33, which is all about exterior lighting. It's got property lighting values, it's got required, and it basically that light fixture and ignores all of Chapter 33 of the ordinance. It's shielded only vertically, it's not shielded horizontally. It wasn't even done properly. I want to read you something out of Chapter 33, 33.08. 1, submittal required. The installation or modification of any exterior lighting except for routine servicing and same type lamp replacement shall require submission of the information described below. And one piece of that information is a photometric data test report of the proposed lighting fixture graphically showing the lighting distribution in all angles vertically and horizontally around the fixture. And as I'm sure Don will confirm, that's not an easy thing to do. It's a software that's pretty expensive. So I mean, that wasn't done. I mean, I think it's important when we do this stuff to follow the ordinance. And I think that needs to be in the resolution. And street lighting is not an exception, by the way. There are exceptions, but not street lighting is. Holiday lighting is an exception.
And that was 3308, you said?
Yeah, 3308 is the submittal requirements,
Okay.
33.08. And none of that was done by the Parks Department, none of this. I mean, I think they've resolved the issue to my satisfaction because they removed lamps from that fixture. So it's not as bad as it was, but I'm still really disappointed that city staff ignored the city ordinance.
If the Parks Department didn't do the work on the lighting, what department did? Was it Public Works that did it?
No, I think it was.
Could have been hired for.
Oh, I thought you
Yeah.
said Parks Department. not
Ignored
work.
ignored the ordinance requirements.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's my comment.
That should be part of our feedback back to the Sustainability Committee then, is that this somehow has to be brought into conformity with Chapter 33 of the ordinances.
Right.
I recommend that anybody that's doing exterior lighting read that ordinance. Because it's pretty clear and it's pretty detailed.
Was the issue with that lighting, or was part of the issue that the lights weren't warm enough? Were they cooler lights?
Excuse me?
Were they cooler colored lights as opposed to the warmer colored light?
I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is
Just
just
that it
that,
was blocked?
right, it wasn't shielded. I mean.
Didn't have
The,
proper cutoff is what you're trying to say.
right.
It just extended itself
Wasn't-
well
it
beyond
wasn't
where.
cut off. The parking lot lights that are way up on a pole are shielded horizontally and shielded vertically. And then the ones we looked at in terms of replacement were all shielded horizontally, so it's cut off and the light is a down light essentially, and it doesn't flows over the property line, right? This was lighting up the whole school ground.
Yeah, and I think on the street ones, the ones we were looking at anyway, these
Right.
Neotech kind
Yeah,
have a snap-on house side shield
Right.
that can go on there.
right.
I don't know that we would install it on every one of those, but some would be
The
appropriate.
lights themselves had a pretty good cutoff as it was.
It seemed like it, that they were
Yeah.
directed reasonably well. To go a little, sideways and forwards, but not so much backwards.
I mean, I think it's a great idea to convert. Burnout, I think, is just when they fail. I don't care if it's a lamp or a ballast that goes either way.
Well,
To
and that's
replace it
the
at
question,
that
if every time a bulb burns out, we're gonna be replacing a lot more fixtures.
Yeah,
And that's okay, we'll just need to budget
we'll need to
appropriately.
budget appropriately and
And can the fixtures be replaced on existing poles, or do you have to,
Some can,
some can, but
Yeah.
if you get into replacing all the poles, I mean, the project downtown for what, 8 streetlights or whatever, cost $140,000.
those, needed all new poles, and
Yeah.
I think that was 17 or 18 light poles and
Yeah.
fixtures that have to be put together and put up. So that's a different scope of work, and that's why I wanted to clarify that in here too, that this is not about. That downtown project number is not about replacing bulbs. It's replacing everything above the ground.
most of your Cobra heads though had an easy retrofit.
Yeah.
The ones that are out on the streets.
Yeah, if it's the same sort of tenon, if there's an
Yeah.
arm that hangs out over the street. And we can get the right size for that,
Yeah.
we can put a new fixture on it. Some of them get a lot more complicated than that. And some, I think that we've got. Really don't lend themselves to a retrofit or a different fixture. We've got those green tubes out in the greenway area. That are just cylindrical poles that have a sweep curve to them, and they continue as a cylindrical pole. And inset to that is a lens with a bulb in it. There isn't that we could find a good option to make that LED other than tearing the ballast out, wiring that as a medium base socket, and putting in what's called a corncob LED bulb, but those are in the ballpark of $120 each, I heard, so. If and when they go dark, we're just going to continue that sort of expense going down the line instead of a fixture that's designed to do this. Till we replace the entirety of those, those poles and
Yeah.
fixtures are a thing.
I think we need to be careful though with that kind of a thing, using a different lamp type. You're gonna get a much, especially with LED, you're gonna get a much brighter.
Yeah.
And that,
Brighter and whiter.
brighter and whiter.
We were looking at a pretty warm coloring as we go. So when we looked at the Leotex, I think we were in the 3,500, maybe 3,000 Kelvin. I think there was talk at one point of 2,700. I don't think we were looking quite that low. But it still would be in that sort of orangish range instead of the super bright white that you find in some communities.
Yeah, I can't stand it.
But even at 3,000 Kelvin, you're still talking about a much brighter light than. then.
It gets that effect, yeah,
Right,
when you
because
look
it's
at
an
it,
LED, yeah,
yeah, exactly.
you need to downsize it.
You know, I've got just a little bike light that's 3 LEDs, and if you look at it, you know you've looked at it. And I mean, it's not much.
I mean, doing a photometric, what mapping is, I don't know, maybe a little overkill, but.
Carl, manufacturers do that all the time.
Huh?
They've got published data on the
Okay.
photometrics of their lamps.
Yeah,
Okay,
usually
So
that's-
you
so to
should be
put it
able
on
to-
a map is not bad.
It's typically even in the catalog of the lamp, the photometrics. So it's not that difficult to find. It's not a special.
Okay.
They do it because they know they have to.
Okay.
We're not the only.
Because
one.
everybody's complaining like,
Yeah,
you know,
okay.
arc lights and
Yeah.
God only knows what they put in there if it's lighting up your backyard all of us.
yeah,
So. Yeah, that's easily found and, you know, a manufacturer is more than happy to furnish that for you.
Okay.
If you're gonna be buying many of them or several. So that's not, I don't see that as an issue. It just has to be done.
yeah. And I don't know, Kelly, if you had anything in terms of an overview that you wanted to bring to the attention of the committee too, while we're discussing that.
Sure, I can say a couple things. First of all, like as a staff position, as sustainability coordinator, I'm tasked to bring down carbon emissions in the city. It's one of my jobs. And we had recently had an energy plan done that did a deep dive into our energy use in the city. And that was completed in 2020. And we found that streetlights were the 3rd largest energy user in the city and have a quite substantial effect on our carbon emissions. They're 3rd behind fleet and the water utility, the pumps, wells, and lifts. So they're a really substantial energy user. And LED lighting is one of the easier sort of no-brainers that communities across Wisconsin are switching out their HPS and metal halide lights to LEDs. And through the carbon reduction program, which is federal funding that comes from the infrastructure bill that was passed last year, there's funding available for municipalities in Wisconsin specifically to do streetlight conversion to LEDs because of its efficacy in reducing carbon. So last Friday, I submitted a grant for $530,000 to the state of Wisconsin. The Wisconsin Department of Transportation is the agency that's doling out this money. I'm not sure if we'll get the whole thing. I think we have a good shot at getting a substantial sum of that. And I broke it out into several phases, starting with our city-owned streetlights. And then I even further broke that out into our Cobra Leo Tech Comfort lights, and then the more specialty lights like Middleton Hills and North Lake lights, because they're very specialized and need probably some more research and exploration into what you want to do there. So hopefully we can get some federal funding to do this. I think what the sustainability committee would like to see to move forward on this, because it is something we've been working on, and all the municipalities in Dane County have been working on also with MG&E to switch out the MGE owned streetlights to get things changed over to LED, because it will draw down the carbon in the county substantially if we all can do this and coordinate to get funding to do this. I kind of lost my train of thought, but we really want to try to do this quickly rather than slowly. So it does say in the resolution to switch them out as they burn out, or as they, that's not the right terminology. So that's great that you called attention to that. We need to figure out how to reword that. But what the sustainability committee would like to see is that instead of a light needing replaced and being replaced with an HPS bulb, to make it more to budget for this, so that when we do replace lights, they are LEDs, even if they have to be the more expensive fixture. That's what the committee would like to see. And then also MGE, you know, we've gotten mixed reports back from them. They've told us before that, oh, we always replace with LEDs. But when I looked to see how many LEDs we have of MGE owned lights, there's only one MGE owned LED light. And we've heard that they're replacing those lights with high pressure sodium. So we'd like that also to be LED if possible. There's a caveat in the resolution that says if there's, circumstances where it's not feasible, because that might be the case in some of those more specialized situations. But we're trying to find ways to take care of the low hanging fruit, to make sure that things are replaced as we can do it with budget, with LEDs, because it'll make financial sense down the road. They last longer, have less maintenance, they use a lot less energy. So it seems like a prudent decision for our operating budget as well, long term. And lastly, I would say that the other part of the resolution talks about wanting the city of Middleton to request from MGE that we're involved in the rate case, or that we're notified of what the rate case that MGE is submitting this spring to the PSC, to the Public Service Commission, about their facility rate charge with LEDs. We want to make sure that we're involved in that, because that would really affect our budget moving forward. If MGE reduces the facility rate charge for LED lights, then it becomes really financially advantageous for the city, for MGE to quickly switch their owned lights in Middleton to LEDs rather than high pressure sodium. So it's a really complicated issue, and there's lots of details and lots of things that make it not simple to just switch everything out, even if you have the budget. But it's just something that I hope Public Works Committee can work with the Sustainability Committee on getting into the weeds a little bit when necessary, to make decisions on which fixtures for which neighborhoods need to be decided on, and to make sure we're choosing and selecting LED streetlights that qualify for focus on energy rebates, if possible. There's just a lot of moving pieces. This is kind of the first foray into that, I guess.
So when you applied for the grant, the federal grant, how would that money be funneled into this? I mean, this is a long process as I read this. As a fixture fails, then you replace it. Well, if they give you a grant for $500,000 or even $300,000, aren't they going to want it spent right away?
It's money that could be spent over 2 or 3 years. And if we get the grant, and we included labor in the grant for switching out the streetlights in bulk to LEDs. So that would mean hiring an entity like PKK Lighting, who have given us a quote saying they could probably do 8 to 10 lights per day at $125 per hour. So we figured that into the grant so that we could switch these out faster than just as they burn out. I know that the Sustainability Committee does not want to see this transition to LEDs stretch on for 6 to 8 years because of the need to reduce carbon much more quickly than that. And streetlights is the lower hanging fruit of reducing carbon of the other things that we're trying to do in the city to do that.
So I think, Don, part of it is, multi-pronged, right? So if a fixture is wrecked and or a bulb burns out on its own merits, that gets replaced, whatever the council decides, if it's bulb driven or fixture driven. Also, if we get federal funding and or capital budget funding, then we replace whole neighborhoods, whether the fixtures are bad or not.
Okay, so that would be a combination of both of those.
That's the way I'm understanding it. Is that right, Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, I think the committee would like to see something where the city commits to, yes, we're going to budget every year for replacing lights with LEDs, regardless of the grant, whether we get it or not. But then the grant can come in and hopefully make a bigger impact and obtain maybe an economy of scale with a company, or with purchasing the fixtures as in bulk. Perhaps we can do it more quickly all at once.
So one of my questions is, and again, this is just, I don't know if the resolution is up on your screen right now, Kelly, but one of
It is.
part of what I drafted is about the city standardizing streetlight fixtures to the degree we can. It sounds like we would need to add a phrase in there that are in accordance with focus on energy rebates or eligible for focus on energy rebates, not just whatever we choose. To make
Yes,
it
that's,
most
yeah.
cost effective.
Yeah, that's excellent. I don't think that when I drafted this, that I knew that, you know, we wouldn't be eligible for certain focus on energy rebates, and now I do. So that's excellent. And I also think the comment about meeting the lighting ordinance is really important. It's somewhat of a separate issue, but it's all interrelated because in the zoning code right now, the planning department, which I'm a part of, and Mark Opitz, who's helping with the zoning code is drafting the lighting ordinance section of that to make it more to comply with dark skies and some other criteria to help, I think, with maybe some of the issues that the Public Works Committee member was raising. I think that's important as well.
Okay, thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
Is there anything of what I've suggested as edits and or questions that seem confusing or should be struck? Beyond anything we want to add as a committee? Let me back up maybe and go piece by piece. Suggesting striking, you know, whoever's maintaining these city-owned streetlights may matter in our implementation or prioritization, but I don't know that it adds much to a resolution, and it might be a hassle trying to track down those numbers anyway. I think the important part is some of ours have been converted to LED and the rest are in need of converting to LED. And I just noticed these are relatively longer, but they don't right now say they're longer than what. So
What's that last phrase for? Can be brighter than older fixture.
oh,
That's what set me off. Thank you.
what does this mean exactly? How does it help us?
That's not a distinct advantage.
Yeah, yeah, it's like, I think people like LED lights because they feel like the light is more focused perhaps, or it's a different quality. I don't like the white bluish light at all, but LEDs have advanced a lot from that original LED light that was first on the market, was really harsh, and now they've found a way to soften that and make it not as white and blue. But brighter doesn't necessarily mean lighter and blue. I think we need to find a better way to explain that quality of light.
Well, do you mind if we just strike it entirely? Who cares? That's helping us with energy savings.
Sure, I mean, it can
that's-
be a bad thing for some people when they hear that and a good thing for other people, so.
And I
that's
think when
fine.
you mentioned the dark skies, which I'm glad you brought that up, because I was hoping that was gonna be part of the new zoning ordinance, but I think that speaks to that.
I think chapter 33 already speaks to, chapter 33 of the ordinances already speaks to dark skies and all those things that you were talking about Mark Opitz doing. Hopefully he doesn't reinvent the wheel.
Well, we did try to, you know, we are seeking LEED certification, and sorry, there's an echo in my voice, but we did not comply, or we didn't meet the criteria for the lighting ordinance for LEED. And I can't tell you the exact particulars now. I can't remember all of them, but we're trying to rewrite that ordinance so that it's more modernized for what other cities are doing with their lighting ordinance to make it better for bird migrations and dark skies.
Okay. This we talked about a little bit already. This is, you know, replacement of entire poles, fixtures, the first page that I had. Is there anything the committee has to add or subtract on the first page? beyond that phrase about brightness. On to the second page. I think somehow if we just clarify if we're talking here about lamps or fixtures. And this we already talked. I'm now proposing adding a phrase in here qualifying that these standardized fixtures really should be eligible for focus on energy grant reimbursement. The question I had in the next one, Kelly, I don't know if it made sense or if you've talked with anybody over at MG&E like Jesse, maybe, but whether or not if the city has a fixture that's MG&E maintained, but it's not an MG&E standard, if that effectively means we need to provide to them a new fixture before they can replace it, because I don't somehow envision them going out and buying one of our fixtures just to maintain it or fix it. And part of the practical upshot might be that since MG&E only has 2 standards, wherever we go off from that, they might not be doing our maintenance anymore. That might be on us.
Can't we standardize on what MG&E does?
No.
No, not at all, nowhere?
In terms of fixture selection,
Yeah,
they have chosen at long last their 2 standard fixtures
for LEDs,
for LEDs.
and we don't like them.
We do like them. The Leotech is the same thing we selected as a standard.
We select,
We have selected the same thing, so that
Yeah,
really should be a non-issue.
well, other than we have not decided that we will put these Leotech fixtures in everywhere. We may want to put in a different style in some neighborhoods or areas
Okay.
that are not MG&E standard.
Okay, well, maybe that should be defined in there, that we'll work hard to put in the MG&E standard.
Well, that's part of what I wrote is we want to standardize light fixtures and hopefully a minimal number of them so that we can keep some stock parts on the shelf and help out MG&E and help out ourselves, frankly,
Okay,
because we have some fixtures that, no kidding, are $4,000 each. And that's holding a light bulb off the ground.
Mhm.
So anyway, that's part of what I think we'll need to work our way through, Kelly, a little bit. And the last time I heard Jesse Shields with MG&E talking with the Sustainability Committee, I think our 3-year timeline does not mesh with their timeline. He was talking in terms of 5 to 8 years. Right?
Yeah, he was. I think the Sustainability Committee wants the city to push MGE wherever they can. And I know some of it depends on this rate case, according to Jesse. It's been something that Dane County municipalities have been working on for a while. And there have been several conversations, and I don't think all the information is quite standardized between all the communities and MGE, but I think everyone would like to see it happen sooner because all the municipalities and the county have these energy goals they want to meet. And so thinking of this huge energy use, you know, extending out to 8 years seems like a long time. Like, what can we do to speed that up? Is it, maybe it's apply for joint grant funding with our utility for this federal money that's coming down. I think there's ways we can work with MGE for it to be mutually beneficial.
I'm not opposed to it. It just struck me as a potential disconnect in our conversations with them. I think when the city transitioned from metal halide to high pressure sodium many years ago, it took in the ballpark of 5 to 8 years to get that done too. Because it's just a lot of fixtures to change. If we hire enough contractors and put them all on it, I think it could be done. It didn't strike me as an unreasonable sort of goal. We're not the only community that they work with, so.
Yeah,
That's all.
that's for sure. Yeah.
Is there anything else the committee had to add or subtract?
Question for you, that
Yeah.
second to the last paragraph, on the this Springs rate case.
Oh,
Is that the only rate case where they're going to address LED fixtures?
Did you hear that, Kelly?
That's the only one I know of. They mentioned that they were planning to include LED streetlight conversion in this rate case. And it's either maybe in the end of this month or May, that they were planning to submit that to the PSC, and then it'll be about 6 months before any decisions made.
Maybe just expand that to say this brings and any future rate cases?
Yeah, that would be great.
I mean, why limit yourself to one rate case? Christ, they submit one every year.
Yeah, that's true.
And of course, what we don't see on the screen yet is a reference to 3308.
So is this, are we supposed to take action on this tonight? Is
Yeah,
that
so
the
what-
intent?
Well,
What Sustainability Committee had asked is that we would provide input back to them.
Okay,
They'll take another look at it and then they'll recommend it to the council for action.
okay.
so we have provided some feedback.
Yeah, this is really helpful. Thank you so much. We'll include all of this.
All right.
By the way, we all got an email from some citizen today.
Yeah. Hey,
There he is. We don't have 2,500 fixtures, do we?
do you remember offhand how many we have? It's not 2,500, no. That I guess we have 960 and MG&E has 250, so we're in the-
1,300,
Yeah,
roughly half. Okay. I was just curious.
I think our annual payment is ballpark of $120,000 of energy.
Okay.
For light bulbs.
Now, I think it's a great thing and we should be doing it. I think we've been stressing that all along with this committee.
Yeah. Yeah, a big part of it's been time. So fortunately, Kelly somehow carved out time to take this on.
We just don't want our streets to be lit up like the parking lot in Palmer, Western Briscoe. That office building. Anyway.
All right.
All right, any additional feedback anybody wishes to offer for Kelly and the Sustainability Committee, or we move on to our final agenda item here?
A motion would be in order, I think, just to,
I will make a motion that we refer the resolution as amended by this committee back to the Sustainability Committee.
Second, Kendra's motion.
Don, I'll second.
Oh, go ahead, Don. Either way.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion with respect to the motion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we will refer the amended resolution back to the Sustainability Committee. Sustainability.
all right. Perfect. Catch up on our last agenda item then. All right, so, did David have to leave?
Yeah, he's a Good Neighbor Fest trustee and they're meeting tonight at 7 too, so.
Of course.
Speak out.
Well, so Shelley Petzold, am I saying that correctly?
You are, yes.
Excellent, has presented a proposal or given us a proposal. So let me get down to it.
You can just go to the first photo one there if you want to.
Okay,
Thank you for your time. I just wanted to share like where I'm talking about. I live right uphill from Lakeview Park. So in those pictures, Lakeview Park would be like behind me where I'm sitting. And there's the baseball field. You can see the back of its sign. And if you look going up that sidewalk, it's not a continuous sidewalk. The picture on the right is a little more close up in there. And because of that slope, and there's a power line right there, the sidewalk doesn't continue through there. So the only way you can take a sidewalk all the way to Lakeview Park is on the other side of the street. So if you want to go to the next picture, Sean. So this is the other side of the street, still going up that same hill, and that blue gray house there is my house. Next photo, please. And that's the retaining wall that, with some great detective work by Tom Weber, figured out that the city did build that wall. That took a lot of digging to figure that out, because this was probably happened in the 1960s. But it is very much not vertical anymore. And at the highest point is probably a 4-foot drop off or something there. And that wall is holding up the sidewalk. And the sidewalk is starting to show some messed up parts because the wall is falling away from it. And we are getting concerned, since that's the one main sidewalk to the path. You've got little kids learning how to bike, moms with their strollers. Our next door neighbor is like 98 years old or something, and that's his exercise, is that stretch of sidewalk there. So it's getting a little iffy. Now, I know you could wait until the wall falls over, but that's more expense, because currently any sidewalk repair falls to the homeowner. So we're kind of hoping to fix the wall before we have to repair the entire sidewalk. The next couple of photos, I attempted to just show like how much it's falling over. So the one on the left, that's the horizontal yellow line is my leveled, and it's 3 inches up from the top of the wall. So that's about how far over it is. And that's a plumb line in the other ones. And it's about 6 inches out from the bottom with that plumb line. So it's going over. The next photo shows some of the, oh no, it doesn't. That's the whole wall. The next, go a couple more photos. So that's looking right at the edge of the sidewalk, and some of the blocks of the sidewalk are shifting towards the wall that's falling over. So usually sidewalk blocks kind of line up, but that one's a full 2 inches left of the one it's next to. I don't think they're supposed to be like that. Next photo, please. And then some of them, I know you repair the sidewalk when vertically they've shifted. And so those are 3 different spots. Some aren't too bad, 1/2 inch. That one's getting to be 1 inch. That one jars me every time I'm shoveling the snow on that spot. I got to always remember to only go down, not up that little lip. Next photo, please. And the wall itself isn't looking that great either. There's a couple of seams there where all of the, I don't know, it looks like gravel now just is kind of pouring out of that little slot. So it's served its use and is ready for something different in that spot. Next photo. That's a panoramic picture, so it looks kind of caved in funny because of the photo aspect, but it's just a straight wall. On the left, they're made of 8-inch high cinder blocks is what they look like to me. And so on the left, there's 5 blocks high. There's just a bunch of dirt up against it right now. And on the right side, because of the slope of the hill, it's only 2 blocks high over there. So it's much taller on the left and goes down on the right. But it's about 46 feet long. It's a pretty good stretch sidewalk. Next photo. So the things involved in the replacement, as far as I know, you need to take out the fence. It sits right on top of the wall. Take out the wall, new, whatever you're going to build the wall out of. That usually involves some gravel and fill. You'd have to replace the fence because the drop off is pretty high. That would probably involve some damage to my yard that would need to be repaired, labor, whatever permits. There's currently no easement we determined there at all. So if the city was going to do that, then you'd have the time for the city attorneys to do whatever they do to get an easement approved. That's time there. And then maybe you can do that without messing up the sidewalk and repairing it. I don't know enough about construction. That looks tricky to me though, because there's not much space between the wall and the sidewalk. So
depending on how it gets built.
yeah. But anyways, we just need to make sure the sidewalk's whole and the job is done. So that's what I know needs to happen. We also have this interesting thing because it's an older house. I don't think you can do this anymore, but the corner of our house is really close to that sidewalk. So when I sit at my kitchen table, if you walk down the sidewalk, you should just wave to me. If there was no window, I could reach out and shake your hand. It's really, really close. So there's this weird privacy thing there because that's my very large kitchen window. And so we went to the Bruce Company and asked what their thoughts were. And so that's the sidewalk going basically vertically through that picture. And then they proposed pushing the wall way out to the left enough that you could actually plant some various screening things in there. That's my house in the top left corner. And they'd put a little tree there. So their proposal, of course, involves all of that. But what I'm hoping is that we could hire the Bruce Company to do something close to that so that we can fix the issue of the wall and our privacy issue. But just looking to the city, like you don't want to pay for all of that. I get that. But for the city to kick in just the part if you were to replace the wall, and then we would pay the rest of it. So it'd be like a joint thing for the Bruce Company in terms of the money. I hope that made sense. There's their bid. The highlighted parts are the parts that are relevant to the city. So when I worked with Tom Weber here at the city, his rough estimate was 9,200, but I think he was just looking at the wall and the removal and then building up of a new one. And I don't know that his estimate included any repair of the lawn, and I don't know how you could do it without doing that, or anything about an easement. So I feel like his estimate is low. And so I'm asking to reconsider that and see if that can't be just a little bit more. The last slide then I think is our proposal. We're thinking that's probably closer to 15,000 that it would cost for the city's part. So we would ask for 15,000, and then we would of course cover the rest of the part that's not part of the wall that's in our yard. And I know that in terms of the budget year, like I'm not in a budget timely moment right now. So it could be 2023. Probably it's not going to fall over before 2024, and that would work out too. You have to decide the money part. I don't know that part.
Sure.
But I'm thinking 15,000 probably gets closer to all the little costs if you put them in there. Okay. The city benefits because that's a high use park. We benefit by not incurring sidewalk repair costs by letting the wall fail before doing the job. And the redesign helps us with our privacy issue, which definitely affects our value of our house. So we're thinking the partnership way is the way to go here.
And then, that just reiterates the request, but we'll come back to that. This is part of what Tom Weber found in a file from 1967 when we think Mendota Avenue was likely widened in some way and sidewalk was finally added. So somebody added via an addendum to the design, installing some sidewalk between, well, it was about 35 feet that they intended to build. We don't know exactly why it got added. We just know it was supposed to be sort of this 35 feet in front of where there was an existing garage at the time. And that there was labeled a pre-existing wall that went out towards the right-of-way area. When this got built and paid for, it turned out to be more like 47 feet instead of 35 feet. So somebody at some point made a change beyond design, but during construction. And we don't have notes of that either, like why they made that change.
On-site decision.
Yeah, something happened. Maybe they just decided, well, this wall wasn't doing so great either. Let's just take part of that down and keep going west. I don't know. And that doesn't even matter so much. What we don't have is any sort of permanent easement that says this is for sure intended to have been a city wall. But we don't have anything other than a bill that says at least the city or county or whoever, well, would have city paid for it. So we don't have anything that says we charged the resident at that time the cost of that. It wasn't included as an assessment. So lacking any good evidence, we think it's probably a city wall and city maintenance responsibility. We don't know that for sure, but this isn't the first time we've run into that. In the past, where we've run into this kind of thing, we've told owners, we think it's a city wall, but if you're tired of dealing with it, we don't mind either taking it out or taking the top off and flaring out a slope of earth and restoring that with some vegetation. And there will just be a transition in grade at say 4-to-1 or 3-to-1 instead of a retaining wall. And some neighbors have said, yeah, that's fine. And other neighbors have said, no, we would prefer for you to rebuild the wall. And then either build it in the right of way or get an easement for it. But we prefer the wall instead of a slope on our yard.
Is the sidewalk in the right of way?
Well, I haven't verified that. I don't know for certain if Tom has verified that. We think they probably built it in the right of way, but that's a fair question and I don't know the answer to it. The retaining wall is almost certainly not in the right of way. And so even though it's on private property and we don't know for certain who should own it, we think probably we do.
But we have records showing we paid for it, so
We paid for it and we did not get reimbursed for it.
the natural assumption is it's ours.
I think that coin lands on us. Yeah. And so what we've offered property owners in the past is, look, we'll tear it out and slope the yard, or we'll rebuild it either in the right of way or within an easement. And then we know for all time it's ours. Part of what I don't know is, oh, and I think Tom worked up estimates both ways. I found some notes today. So if we did the sloping work, that would be kind of numbers 1, 5, and 6 of the Bruce Company proposal, which would be, tear it out and start over. That's $5,300. Put in topsoil, another $3,000, and fine graded seed, and that totaled up to something in the ball of $9,700. Okay. The other option that Tom looked at was, well, if we tear out the wall and rebuild it and put a fence back in, the wall was something he thought like 120 square feet. Shelley, I saw your number here was more like 140 square feet. So the numbers are a little bit iffy, but at $60 a foot, which is what it's a little higher than what we paid for some similar work last summer for a modular block retaining wall that stacks together and has pins to hold it. That would be in the ballpark of $9,200 to replace the wall, another couple $1,000 for fencing. What it doesn't get us is either an easement that the city might compensate for, or because the attorney's fees are really slight on those. We as staff typically write them because they're very easy to draft, and then our city attorney just reviews it. Or if we rebuild it out into the right of way, then we would certainly have to take the sidewalk apart and put it back together, because the whole alignment would shift toward the road by a couple feet. But then the wall would be in the right of way, the sidewalk would be in the right of way. That would add to the cost to the tune of $2,800 to replace 50 feet of sidewalk at this year's bid prices. So all in, we're in the ballpark then of $12,000 if we decide we'll rebuild the wall out in the right of way.
As opposed to an easement.
As opposed to an easement.
Yeah, not to micromanage it, but from the looks of the sidewalk and the wall, aren't you gonna have to redo the sidewalk and tear it out and redo it anyway? Because you're gonna have to do something in there when you tear out that wall, or everything's gonna collapse anyway.
It depends what we do. If we were just taking off the top course of wall and putting dirt over this,
Yeah, that'd be different. That'd be different.
That
That's
would
the
be
slope
different.
approach,
Yeah.
but
if we're tearing out this wall and even just rebuilding it in its place, yeah, because we need to get on the fill side of that thing. So then sidewalks going out.
Yeah.
Back in.
I have a concern about this proposal anyway. What's a Wall Pond wall? It looks like loose stone to me.
I think it is
And
unsecured.
bluestone, and how does that? What's the warranty on this? I mean, why wouldn't the earth push that right over a period of short time? I think a structural engineer needs to look at this. Even if we agree to do anything.
Well, and I think one of the things is if Bruce Company builds, let me go back. If Bruce Company builds this wall, this location, I think it becomes a private wall and it's less of our concern.
Yes.
At that point, you're just asking if the city would fund you to hire Bruce Company to build private improvements on your private property that would be privately owned and maintained. And we're just done with it.
Yeah, if the city would pay for the equivalent of what it would take you to fix that wall, then we would have it rebuilt in the way that fits our needs on our property. And then because it is then way in from the sidewalk, the wall would be ours in terms of owning and maintaining.
Does the city have any liability for it not working? If we pay for a portion.
I think we would not, because at that point it's
I
designed
think you
and
better have an
owned.
agreement. that basically-
Yeah, there would be,
Full harmless agreement.
that's exactly.
Part of what I don't know is, can the city even decide to just spend public funds on a private improvement that's been privately designed? I don't know the answer to that because we haven't done that before.
And if they can do that, can it be done without having to bid anything? I mean, you just hand it to the Bruce Company?
No, we would hand this to Petzold's.
Right.
They're hiring the Bruce Company, not us. At that point,
Yeah.
we're just saying,
It
here's
was gonna
something.
agree to equivalent.
Yeah,
Well, and that I think you've got to run by the attorney. Sure,
Absolutely.
I would have to for that proposal, because I'm just not sure if we can.
Yeah. Well, so I think we should do that before we make any decision anyway, and no matter what, it's gonna be next year for funding.
I would agree with that.
If the committee is supportive of looking into it, that I think would be the next.
It seems a lot easier than us rebuilding the wall and then 20 years from now coming back and rebuilding another one.
Yeah. I don't disagree. But yeah, we've had plenty of bad experience with stacked block that are
Yeah.
not mechanically adhered.
Yeah.
And over time, they just slide.
With
And
this
we would
is-
agree that whatever wall we built would be ours to maintain, whether it's good choice or bad choice, that would be on us.
Okay.
Like, we recognize that.
Yeah,
Well, the existing wall has lasted, nearly 60 years, right?
getting there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
amazing.
And last is always relative, right?
Yeah.
This is not the slope.
Meaning,
it's
it's
intended
really-
to have. It's but it's there,
Yeah.
exactly.
So can we get city attorney feedback on this?
Sure.
Shared cost and see what, then we can make a decision that way.
bet.
And have Mr. Weber relook at his numbers and just make sure we know. what we're looking
Well, I think his $60 a square foot is okay. The quantity might be a little bit up in.
quantity, and then also, does that include, this thing's gotta be in some kind of a footing?
Usually they go one course deep,
That's it.
and that, yeah. And that never works out quite right. So sometimes it's a course and a half, because you have to build them horizontal.
Which that was. But anyway, yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty normal.
okay,
So and that's part of why we want to mechanically adhere. We want that whole thing to be one thing, not
Right.
a bunch of blocks.
box with rebar and filled with concrete,
Exactly.
that works.
Okay, yeah, I'd be happy enough to do that. If they're supportive of that, then we can look into it.
I guess, do we need a motion to do that, or just
I think we
an
just-
agreement?
I think we can just direct Sean to
Direct Sean?
Yeah.
talk to the city attorney, and then when he gets an opinion, he can bring it back to you.
Okay,
Hi, this is Emily. I just wanted to share that that's a really tight stretch of sidewalk in summer and winter. I have had issues walking with my stroller before, but also icy patches in winter when I do doors. They do a great job keeping it clear. However, it's just uneven. When my son was a toddler and my daughter was in a stroller, I had to really watch him because of that drop off. He was a runner. And, you know, I'm just bringing this up because that is a steep drop off. And with it spreading out like that, it's just tough. And I do appreciate that you guys are considering this, and that wall needs to be redone. And I like that the owners are trying to be thoughtful, especially as we're trying to be more green and get more plants and trees in the city. But I understand that you guys are focused just on the sidewalk and that wall. But I appreciate your thoughts tonight. Thank you.
So we don't need to do anything else other than we have an understanding that you're gonna
Contact the attorney. and
Yeah,
be on the
contact the
agenda
city
in 2
attorney.
weeks.
If we can do what's proposed, it just in concept, I won't pin down dollars just yet, but
Okay.
would we be allowed to do that? To effectively partly fund a private improvement to avoid having a public project.
That works for me.
Okay.
So
And then I'll just hear from you at some point.
Yeah, and I'll loop in Tom too, because I know he's pretty invested in it.
It's done a lot of legwork.
Yeah.
Been great.
That was the end of our agenda.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Oh,
Carl had-
I think Dan started though.
you can have it.
You can second that.
One of you can second.
I'm not gonna fight it.
You can second.
I can second.
All right.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we stand adjourned until
24th,
24th.
and just looking ahead, the 24th, I'm trying to schedule an open house prior to the meeting, probably from 5:30 to 6:30 for the Parmenter Street reconstruction job. North of Century, and that would blend into a presentation, some discussion at the top end of the meeting. And we have preliminary plan review / approval. Tentative agenda as well.
Would that be the library again, like the one for?
I think we'll have it in the council chambers here, 'cause that way I can do it as a hybrid meeting. I don't know how the library stuff works.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I barely know how this stuff works.
Thank you all for your time. I
You bet.
appreciate it.
thank you for
Bye, everyone.
presentation.
I think Tom.
Good night, Carrie.
Good night, Carrie.
He did it earlier.
Yeah, well, these aren't.
Tom and I have been talking for a long time.
It sounds like.